Hi everyone. I'm just setting things up here and I'll just give you all a chance to join us. Well, I can see people are starting to join now. Hi everyone. Hi Lou. Hi Katie. Nice to see people joining. And I know it's a Friday afternoon. Some people have said they're at work. Some people are on hospital appointments. So say thanks to the NHS for me while you're there. So and some people are in different countries. So people will be possibly catching up later. We'll just give it a couple of minutes and give people a chance to join. Just looking to see. Oh, yeah, I can see a few comments coming through. Oh, Tina's there. Hi, Tina. Flo is there. Jill. Hi, everybody. Oh, there's Raina. Hi, Raina. And Sue. Oh, it's nice. Some familiar names here. Oh, and Leslie's just joined. Nice to see you. And Jackie. Oh, this is nice. People are just starting to join. Actually, it's quite nice to have this couple of minutes at the beginning. I've got some workmen in the house at the minute, and one of them has been painting the front of our house, which is rendered. And just before I switched the camera on, he put the ladder up and appeared right in my window looking in. That's a little bit off putting, but he's just moved on. Oh, Cynthia's joined, Linda, Glynis, Angela. Hey, this is, oh, Diane. Hi, Diane. Nice to see everybody. Yeah, and if you see me, I'm flicking around because I'm looking at my phone, which I'm filming with, and I'm going to flip that round in a bit to do the drawing. And but I'm looking at my iPad as well, then I can sort of see what I'm doing. So you'll see me kind of flicking my eyes around, looking at various things. As some of you all know, I just had COVID recently. So fortunately, I'm okay now. But it kind of wiped me out a bit. I think those of us that thought we had this stellar immune system and missed it all at the beginning, this latest variant, it kind of scooped us all up and caught up with us all eventually. Eventually. And there, oh, there's Debbie. Hi, Debbie. Hi, Jan. Oh, what a gang. Wouldn't it be nice if we could all be in person somewhere? Oh, Diane. Miss you too, Diane. Hey, right. I'm going to get started very shortly. Oh, people are still joining though, so yeah, Jan's saying it left you with a cough. Jan, I've been coughing for 3 weeks. Yeah, definitely. My husband had it at the same time and kind of just shrugged it off. And I had it to start with, I was a bit cocky. I was going, oh, this is fine. I've had worse hangovers. And then it got to about day 4 and I was like, wallop. Felt dreadful. Couldn't think straight. Oh, Yvonne's just joined as well. And Julie. Very nice. Nice group today. Okay. I'm going to make a start anyway. I'm going to do a little bit of chatting to start with, and then I'll flip the camera around and we're going to do some drawing. So first of all, hello, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining me here, and thank you to Jammers for inviting me. It's really, really nice to be here. Now, I'm on the internet. I've got both my kind of grown-up kids home from uni draining on the internet. I've got my what do you call it, booster on, so hopefully everything will be fine. If I suddenly disappear, I haven't gone somewhere, it means my internet's down, but I'm not going to panic about things I can't control. I'll just come back, so uh, we'll just keep an eye on that, see what happens. Now then, I've got my notes here as well so I don't forget what I want to talk about. First of all, when Jam has asked me to do this live little session, I thought, let's do some drawing, because drawing is something that I do all the time, always have done. It's really funny, if I look back at my old school notes and things, which I do still have some of them, they are absolutely covered in drawings. So I've always done drawing, and I think that's one of the key things to drawing is the more you do, the better you get and the more confident you get. So I knew as soon as I put the note out on Facebook saying, right, we'll do a drawing session, I knew what would happen. I know people will say, oh, I can't draw. And sure enough, I had quite a few comments, well, I can't draw. And I think this is a problem as we get older. So I used to teach in a primary school. And if you ask a class of 6-year-olds who can draw, every single one of them will say, I can, I can. They've got that enthusiasm, and most of all, they've got the confidence. And somewhere along the line, we lose that confidence a little bit. Maybe somebody told us something we'd drawn wasn't very good, or maybe we just get really, really more self-critical. So we start to look at things, we tell ourselves it's not very good, and then we don't want to do it again. So one of the key things is to keep doing it, because the more you do, the better you get. But also we want to make it really easy, accessible, manageable. And I've kind of got mine down now to a T, that I can go out literally with a sketchbook, a pencil and a rubber, and I can capture everything that I need that I can work on later. So I can't exactly teach you how to draw, but I can show you how I do it, and I can give you some of the tips and things to make it more accessible and easy to do wherever you are. So, as I say, I like to go out with absolute minimal equipment. And here's the thing, when I'm drawing, if I draw actually outside looking at the real object, I get much better drawings than if I take a photograph and do it from the photograph. But to keep it manageable, when I go out, let me just show you my sketchbook here. Now, this sketchbook is a watercolour sketchbook that fits in my bag, and I take a rubber and I take a mechanical pencil. Mechanical pencil, because then I don't need to worry about a sharpener. And that goes in my bag wherever I go. So then if I'm waiting for an appointment, or I'm sitting at the pub and my son and husband decide they want a game of pool and leave me sitting there, I can draw the inside of the pub, which I have done. Then I've always got equipment right there, and it's easily accessible. So you could try and get into that practice of just taking a really simple sketchbook and pencil, so you've got it in your bag all the time. What I then do is, if I'm drawing out en plein air, they call it, al fresco, I draw the minimal outline in pencil, and then exactly where you are standing, what you are looking, take a photograph. You do find if you take one step to the right, one step to the left, all the angles have changed. So absolutely take a photograph where you are, so that you can compare that to your drawing later. As I say, I do a quick outline in pencil, and then later on at home I might add the outline in pen and put the colour on. Now this also means if you get those awkward people coming up to ask, oh, what are you doing? Can I have a look? You only put in the pencil outline on, and then you can just say to them, oh, I'm just doing a quick outline, I'm finishing it later. And you don't feel that pressure to have to prove to people that you are an artist and you're doing something proper. So you put that quick outline on, take a photograph, and then you can add detail later. And then when you are drawing, we're doing real observational drawing today, and observation is absolute key. Looking at what you're drawing, looking back at the page, looking again at what you're drawing, looking back at the page. So it really is about observing. However, I also think when you're drawing, half of it is what you see and half of it is what you know. So you know, for instance, if you're drawing a 3D object, you know how the kind of back of that object all fits together. You've got that logic already, but you're also looking and what you see. Now, when I started drawing a lot more, which was early last year, one of the things I did was put a sketchbook together with just cheap cartridge paper, because it felt like less pressure. And let's see, here we are. This is where I sort of started. This is my neighbour's house. When I look out of the window where I am now, that is what I see. So that's what I started sort of drawing, just looking at sort of buildings, objects, or whatever. And then as time's gone on, I've drawn a lot more and in different size books. And I'll show you some of those in a minute when I turn the camera around. But I want to share a couple of books with you as well. Now, a lot of you will have seen me recommending this one. And this was recommended to me by my good friend Michelle at the Hobby Room. A lot of you will know Michelle. This is a great book for not teaching you how to draw, but encouraging you to draw. And this is very much based on green sketching. So sketching flowers, trees, wildlife, everything outside. That's a really good book to encourage you to draw. And it was in this book that I saw the idea of drawing things in little squares. Let me just show you how that looks. I know some of you, here we are, will have seen this on my Facebook and so on. Whoa, there we are. Okay, and that, when you are out and about, drawing tiny snapshots in little squares, make things so fast, so easy, and it really captures all of your memories in a really simple way. So that's one of the things we'll be looking at today. Now, the other way of doing it, by the way, sorry, that's called the Green Sketching Handbook, and it's by Dr. Ali Foxon. And she just goes by Ali Foxon on Instagram. And this one is Samantha Dion Baker, Draw Your Day. And this is another really nice book. And this is about, again, capturing just the everyday, but rather than put them in square little frames, she just builds all of those together on one page. So that is another way of kind of putting things together. So I'm working in a Moleskine watercolour sketchbook. Actually, you can work on anything. So while I've been faffing about getting ready for the class, this is just on a piece of loose card. I was just having a little practice and getting myself ready. So don't think you have to have the best watercolour sketchbook. You really don't. You don't have to have the best watercolours. You just need some colours and a sketchbook. Now, I like to draw, as I say, in my mechanical pencil. You can do it in any pencil. Then I'm going to do it two ways today. So on the supplies list, I said I wanted you to have something which is not waterproof. So I'm just going to use my fountain pen with regular writing ink in. This is not waterproof. That is going to run. And that's one of the things I want to do today. Then for the other sketches, I'm using Unipin. These are permanent fine markers. The other ones I like, hang on, I've got them somewhere. Derwent line makers. They're also permanent. So anything like that that isn't going to run, so that when we put watercolour on, it kind of stays put. When we do some watercolouring, I like to use this brush, and it's got quite a big tip, as you can see. This is just a Cassart number 8. And then I have one really small fine brush for doing detail. So nothing more fancy than that. I've got a big one and a little one, and that will do. And then I like to have a darker pencil. This is a Stabilo All, or something like this. These are fabulous pencils, Blackwing, for adding any extra dark shading. So they're kind of useful as well. So in a moment, I'll just give you a couple of seconds to grab those supplies and be ready. I'm going to fiddle and turn that camera around. Now, also in the pinned posts here on the Janus group, there are some photographs. So this is what we're going to attempt to draw today. So these are things I've just taken photos of on my travels. So that's a beach scene that we're going to start with. And then that's a village scene, so kind of urban sketching, lines and angles. And then we're going to have a go at something like this. So a river scene. Okay, so we'll have a go at all of those. So those photographs are pinned for you at the top of the group. The very first thing, though, that we're going to have a go at drawing is something simple that is in front of you. So I'm going to draw this. This is my paint pot. It's a little vase. I've got my paint pots in. I want you to pick one simple object. It might be your cup of tea. Let me just show you these are the sort of things I do with my water-soluble pen. I quite often end up drawing tea and mugs. That's because they're always in front of me. So if you've got a mug or a water jar or a little pot that's got your brushes in or something, let's just get one thing in front of us that we can draw. Now I'm going to swivel the camera around in a moment, and I want to get it right. So you might just want to turn it down and look away for a minute because it makes you feel a bit travel sick. But I need to make sure I've got that angle of camera so that you can see my drawing really, really well. Somebody just asked a question about the books. Let me just remind you, you don't have to have these, by the way. These are just books that I've found quite inspiring and useful. So this one is the Green Sketching Handbook by Dr. Ali Foxon. And this one is Samantha Dion Baker, Draw Your Day. So they're definitely not essential, but they are quite nice and quite inspiring. Right, it's time to swivel the camera, so look away for a moment while I just faff about doing this. Okay, now, I hope that's okay. I hope that's giving you a reasonable view. Yeah, if that's looking okay, you can give me a little thumbs up sign or something so I know if I need to move things. I've tried to get a bit of light on there as well. That's good, yeah, I'm seeing a few thumbs up. I can't always see the comments coming through, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to keep going, and then after we've done the recording, I'll go back and I'll check all of your comments, and then if there's any questions that I need to answer, then, oh yeah, I'm getting loads of thumbs up, so everyone's saying, right, good, they can all see fine. So then if there's any questions I've missed, I'll just catch up with them after. I'm just going to keep going. Now you can see here, these are the ones that I've done with my water-soluble pen. So that's a little tree scene I drew. That's from the same river scene, actually, that we're going to do. This is my window here that I'm looking out of, and I've got a little vase. Here's a cup of tea. Here's another cup of tea. Anyone would think I'm obsessed with tea. Now, I'm going to draw my vase. What I want you to do, whatever you're going to draw, have a look really closely at it. When I look at my vase, it's got a kind of an oval top, but it's not just one ring. I'm going to start drawing it now and then you'll see more what I mean. So I'm looking at my vase. It's got an oval top, and it depends which angle you are looking at your mug of tea or your vase or whatever. So if you want to just start by putting that one kind of simple shape. And what I can see when I look at this, it's not just one line at the top. Because it's dimensional, it's got actually this shape here. Now, one of the things about my drawing is that I keep it really loose, very sketchy. That way, I don't have to be that accurate. I don't want to be that accurate. I don't want to get obsessed too much with detail and perspective. I just want to draw what I see, so I keep it very loose and sketchy. Now, my vase comes out slightly. So it's wider at the bottom than it is at the top. And because it's round, I don't see a straight line at the bottom. I see a curved line at the bottom. Now halfway down, my vase changes from red to grey, so there's quite a distinct line there. It's got some little bits of pattern here. Yeah. Can you see how I'm being really kind of loose with it? That's not particularly accurate. And then it's got some little stripes part of the pattern. Now one thing that helps is behind my vase, my craft mat kind of ends here. And the minute you put something like that, it grounds it a little bit and it just stops it looking like it is floating. There is a bit of shadow on mine and it's sort of on this side here. And then up here, I've got a few paintbrushes in mine. And what I'm doing, I'm kind of drawing, it's almost just hinting at the fact that there's brushes. It really doesn't have to be too perfect. Now that's all I'm going to do. And I'm just doing this in this fountain pen. It's a really nice heavy little brass fountain pen actually, but the ink is just an ordinary writing water-soluble ink. So once you've got that outline in, I'm just looking for my brush now. This is my favourite brush. It's nothing special, but it's just my favourite. I slightly panic at the thought of losing it. And I've got a piece of kitchen roll as well because I don't want this to be too wet. So I've wet my brush, but just so it's not too wet. I don't want to flood it. And all I'm going to do now is use the water to add the shading. This is such an easy way of adding shading to something. So I'm just going to round the outline first, because inevitably, whatever you're drawing, because it's dimensional, it will be slightly darker around those edges. See how straight away that's added some kind of depth and some shading. And the same here where the edge of my craft mat is. And underneath where that shadow is. Now the bottom half of my little vase is different colour. So I'm just going to bring in a bit more colour there. And of course, inside there, it is much darker. And when I said to you before, drawing is half what you see and half what you know, even without looking, I know that the inside of my vase there is going to be much darker. And you can add a little bit of shading and detail to what you've got there. If you need a bit more colour, so maybe here, as long as it's reasonably dry, you can go back on, add a bit more ink, and then that gives you a little bit more ink to play with. doing things this way means you really don't have to be that accurate. It's just a really loose, doodly, sketchy little watercolour. But you can use that technique with anything if you're out sketching in the wild. See, the true urban sketchers, you know, the real diehards, they would say it's not true urban sketching unless you're actually out in city centres or whatever, drawing it in the fresh air. And then if you wanted to be a little bit more journally, like art journally with something like this, you could add some journaling around that. See here, like I just wrote tea. It's not very profound, is it? But there you go. Okay, so how are you getting on? Have you managed to do a little kind of water-soluble sketch? I'm not seeing any comments at the minute, so I don't know if it's just my setup, but anyway, I'm going to keep going and I'll check your questions and things at the end. Now, one of the things I think that as adults we need to get to grips with when we're drawing is accepting sometimes that we do get things wrong. Now, I'm quite good at this. I'm not really precious about. Oops, sorry, I just knocked the camera. I'm not really precious about things if I don't get them right first time. So here is a sketch. Look, I was out with my good friend Michelle. She's my partner in crime for doing anything like this. And we were drawing, it's a little signal box actually at the railway. And I got it really wrong. It's totally the wrong shape. And sometimes I can't see that until I've done quite a bit. So then all I do, I don't get precious about it. I just turn over and start again. So it's really, something we need to get to grips with is just having another go, accepting that things don't always go to plan and we can always just start again. Now I want to, right, I have done my squares slightly bigger just for the camera to make sure that you can see. I usually do them about 4.5 centimetres, but it's up to you. These are about 6, I think. So if you want to do them inside a little frame, then do. Otherwise, you can just do them and piece them all together on a page. It's completely up to you. I do a variety. So let me just show you this other little book. So this is a little watercolor book. So this is where it's quite small still. These are just postcard size, but I just do these and fill the whole page. Or you can just do them inside a little square. Now, if you've got those photographs in front of you, I want to start with that seasidey one. So this is Seaham Beach in County Durham, and I really liked this scene because it's got these really nice focal points at the front. It's got some nice rusty colour underneath. And one of the things, before I start sketching, even on this smaller scale, what I'm looking at first of all is the lines. Now, what I can see, so this is when we're talking about observation, I can see that these are perfectly upright. So that's something to bear in mind when we're drawing. They are vertical and they are straight. This bit of pipe and fence underneath is slightly angled. Okay, so that's what the observation is telling me, that they are very straight, they are slightly angled here. And then along the top here is the horizon, which is sort of straight, and then this kind of hill bit here comes off at the side. Now it's really important to bear those lines in mind so that we get things the right sort of perspective. Perspective is a whole different, quite a complex thing really. So we're not doing too much on that today, but it really helps to bear those things in mind. So when I start this, the first thing I'll do probably is put these in, and I'm going to keep it again really, really loose. Here's the little practice one I did, look. By keeping it really loose like that, it can't really be wrong. So I'm going to start by putting these in because they're the centre bit, and then everything else I can kind of build in around it. Now I'm going to start in pencil. Okay, so I've got the outline of those two. I don't really know what they are, old fence posts maybe, and one is slightly kind of wider and taller than the other. Now this pipe at the bottom is coming in at a bit of an angle. And then there's a little bit of path. I'm just pausing to give you a chance to catch up there. Now when I'm drawing my next bit, I want to put this line of horizon in, but look where it is. The horizon line is part way down these kind of fence posts. So this is kind of what we're using to help us to get things in the right place-ish. My drawings, honestly, are never ever that accurate. Of course, generally speaking, the horizon is going to be straight. The horizon, by the way, is always there. We can't always see it, can we? In an urban setting, we can't see the horizon, but it is always there, of course. When you're at the seaside, you can see it. Now, when I look back here, then the cliff starts to come up just from behind this post here. And then it comes up higher at the side. So this is what I do. I look for things to help. So I know that it comes up behind there, and then it goes off higher to the left. In front, all of this is sand, but of course the light, it was low, it was quite, I think it was quite wintry here. So we've got a bit of reflection, but the bit of sand that's very yellow at the top was the bit that was in the sunshine. So there is a yellowy sand here. And then a bit further down, it's darker. There are actually some figures. They're so far away, you don't need to draw them as figures. You can literally just put them in as little lines. And then here, look, there's a few little rocks that come out into a bit of the beach before the ocean. And to draw these kind of rocks, you'll see me doing this on the other one, on the river one as well. I tend to put my pen pencil down, kind of single line. And there's another one just here. Now when I add some watercolour to this, there's quite a distinct pattern here of where it's dried, so it's much darker on the sand. So although it's all sand, it's very different colours. So I'm just going to pencil that in so that when I add my watercolour, I know where that line is going to be. That is all the detail I would put in pencil. So I would be drawing this normally out in the fresh air, looking at the scene, pencil it in, take a photograph exactly of where I'm standing so that when I look at my phone, the view is exactly the same as what I've tried to draw, and then I can finish it off at home. So that means I'm not always carrying loads of watercolours and things around. And once I get to that point, I then go over with my Unipin. If you are struggling to keep this kind of very loose looking, then I suggest you can do this by the single line method. So do it without lifting your pen. That kind of forces you to be a little bit looser, because if you try and go in and draw very, very neat lines, then you do have to be very accurate. If you go in very loose or scribbly, or just keep your pen down and do it all in one, then you don't have to be accurate. I love these kind of rusty things you see at seasides that are just so weathered. And of course, we have all got really different drawing styles, and again, the more you do, the more you kind of develop your own style. Here's my horizon line here, sort of going into the ocean. And there's the cliff top there. And actually on top of the cliff there are some little masts or something up there. And here are some little people. And then the rocks, I'm going to keep my pen down. So I'm just kind of drawing a series of joined circles. Now that's the quite distinctive rock that we can see. And this is the really bright yellow sandy bit that we can see. Now I'm not going to draw this line in pen because it's not really a line. That is just where I know I have to make sure that just comes a bit further down there. That's where the colour of the sand changes. Now on here, this is that kind of concrete with all the little pebbles in. If you want to, you could put some of that detail in. I don't think you need to draw all of those in. It's a bit like when you draw a house. You don't need to draw every stone and every brick. You give a hint of it and your brain fills in the rest of the details. Oh, I've just spotted there's another rock on that side there. Now, I'm going to add some colour to mine straight away. Before I do that, I'm just going to rub out the lines. If you don't, that pencil gets trapped underneath the watercolour. So you want to get rid of those, you can do that before you paint. Even on this small scale, I'm using my big brush. Now, with watercolour, I've got quite a nice set now of Schmincke watercolours, but you know, you don't need a fancy set with loads and loads of colours. You need a small set. I find a grey or a black is really useful for changing the tone of any colour. So I use a lot of grey, which you will see as I'm working, but you don't need loads and loads of colours. I'm just going to show you how I've added a bit of blue here for my sky, but lots of water. So that's the thing I like to do, is start really light, really watery, and then I can always add more. Now this here, look, is slightly pinkish. I think I must have taken this, it was quite a wintry time, I think. So there's a hint of pink in the sky there. I think it doesn't really matter if your colours aren't totally accurate. So you could do the whole kind of David Hockney look, if you like. You can go in and add fantasy colours, do whatever you like. So I'm just dropping a little bit of pink in there. Now, because it's wet, it's spreading into the blue anyway. So when you use watercolours, wet on wet means the colours automatically run into each other and start to blend a little bit. Now, I usually start with the sky, actually. I find then it just grounds everything else and I get more of a sense of where everything else is. I'll put these in next, I think. You can see how loose I keep my watercolour. I don't think you have to fill every bit of every shape with the colour. I like to leave some gaps. I like to leave a bit of fresh air showing, if you like. And again, because this is wet, I can add a little bit of extra colour there. And using this bigger brush helps me to keep it loose like this. Now this cliff top hillside here, I'm going to do in a darker green. And then I've got this yellow ochre colour. And I use this for everything. I use this for the sandstone of buildings, for sand. It's just one of those really useful colours. Now this is a colour where I will often add a touch of grey to that or a touch of black. Now you can see as soon as this starts to dry, watercolour goes really pale as it dries. So you can always go back and add a bit more. That's way pinker than it actually was, but I quite like that. And here for the sand, actually, it looked quite grey on the day, probably because it was reflecting the sky, which was greyish. And here it would be darker. Now again, this is the kind of what you know versus what you see. And then where I gave myself this little line, it's just really where the sand changed colour because of the light and the shade. Just putting that little extra pipe in there. And are you all managing to play along? Again, I can't really see any comments, but if you want to give me a little thumbs up or something so I know if we're still making contact out there. It's quite a lonely business this sometimes, doing a live. You feel like you're talking to yourself. And here I'm just going to, oh yeah, thank you for your feedback, everybody. I know you're still there. Not so lonely now. Now, you see how I've just put a really light, very, very watery grey there to give it some sense of a bit of perspective. Now, underneath these kind of fence, I don't really know what they are. I think they're all fence posts. Look at this here where it's rusted. Yeah, that's a gift there, isn't it? That's lovely. That's a really nice bit of, we can exaggerate that a little bit. I'm picking out a little bit of orange. Now, as the watercolour dries, it always goes lighter. So once you've got your basics in, you can always go back and just add another layer. So I'm just going to build it up a little bit. Otherwise it can look a little bit flat. Remember, all we're trying to do really is just capture the essence of something. It doesn't have to be perfectly, exact. Mine never are. They're just capturing a moment. And then once I've done this, I'm going to leave this one because there is a danger that you keep going and overdo it. And then you can just write a little note to yourself of where it was, what we've drawn. Now, usually what I do with mine is add a little bit of Stabilo, or, like we said, what was the other one? Oh, the black wing pencil, because that will give the extra depth of shade. But while it's wet, I'm not going to do that. So I'm just going to leave that and let that dry, and then I will come back to it. Yeah, Katie says her posts are bleeding into the sky. Yeah, there's just, you've got to be really careful with watercolour. The wet on wet is actually really handy sometimes when we want it to bleed. When we don't want the colours to bleed, we need to make sure it's dry. That's one of the difficult things in doing a live, because we're kind of pushing on and moving on. You can always just leave things to dry if you're having that problem. Okay, now just give you a moment to finish off that one. As I say, I'll come back to that one and add a bit of depth and shading once it's dried. Now let's have a look at this building one. This is the village of Askham in Northumberland. Now you can see what I mean by this is the yellow ochre colour I use. There's a lot of sandstone in the area where I live. The whole of the kind of north and northeast, there's a lot of sandstone, which is beautiful, but sometimes it can make your scenes a bit bland because everything becomes the same sort of colour. So one of the reasons I picked this scene to photograph, caught my eye, was this red telephone box. This is brilliant. This is a pop of colour against this kind of rustic scene. Also, look at this window. Again, that's a gift. That kind of rusty orange colour in the middle of the wall. That's something you can really play with and exaggerate. When I drew this, to me, that green, whatever it is, that's boring. That can go. Now, this is when you're doing art and drawing, you can miss out the bits that you don't like. That's completely up to you. If I was going to draw this on a whole page, I would probably draw that whole scene. if I'm going to draw it in that smaller box, what I'm looking for is just the interesting bit that I want to draw. So this is why I've given you this cropped photograph as well. I quite like this view. I mean, you could choose a different one. This is quite a nice roof here. So you might choose to draw this bit. But I liked this view with the telephone box in this corner. I'm going to miss that out because I think it's a little bit dull. I like the window here and these extra little openings here. So it's a really nice scene to draw this because it's fairly straightforward as well. Again, let's start by looking at the lines. From the top, look, we've got a straight line for the roof. The bottom of the roof is another straight line. The wall is just very slightly angled up. It's really helpful to look at it first like that and decide, pick out the lines, and then we'll put those in first. So I'm going to actually just draw this scene here with the phone box in the corner. Let me show you what my practice one looked like. So there's too much detail in that whole view to draw. But once you choose your frame, you pick out the bit that you want, it then makes it a lot easier. So I'm going to start with the top roof line. And there's the bottom roof line. Now I'll put the other detail, the windows and things in, but to start with, I'm just going to put the lines in. Then everything else follows from there. This wall goes slightly up. And then here is the phone box. Now, the top of this stone wall has this row of stones in a different, I forget what, I should know this, my husband's a dry stone waller, I can't remember what they call it, but the same as when we did the pebbles on the beach, if you keep your pen down and just kind of draw them in all together. Once you've got that wall top in, if you look at where the phone box is, the phone box comes a little way above that. And we're not going to get the whole phone box in. When I drew this originally, I just wanted that hint of colour. Because it won't be a phone box anymore. You'll probably have the defibrillator in. Well, the one in my village, actually, they turned into a little library, which is pretty cute. Now, we'll fill some stones in on this wall later. If you want to put that little green box in, then go ahead. Yeah, I think that's a bit dull for me. Now, it really helps if you kind of look at the relationship between things. So here with the phone box, and just up and slightly offset is that skylight. So if you go just up and slightly offset, and you can put that skylight in. Right next to the phone box is this kind of doorway. And then, of course, there is the stone plinth along the top. Then there is a much lower doorway. We can just see the top of that in the photograph. And the next one, I won't be able to fit the whole thing in. I'm just going to bring in the edge there. Now I don't want to miss this one though, because this is the lovely colour that I want to be able to include that. Now, one thing that is quite obvious is these larger stones around the edges of windows and things. So it's quite nice to put those in. Then we'll put some other little stones in. Again, just a hint of it. We don't want to draw every stone. Well, you can if you want to, but I find that's a little bit too fussy. Now, if we look at this skylight here, and this is to do with perspective and the angle of the roof, these lines are actually on an angle. They're not straight. This is straight because we're looking straight on, but the roof is going off at an angle. So this skylight is going to come in on an angle like that. There is an extra line here. These are the kind of ridge tiles. And there's also an extra line here along the bottom of the roof. And underneath that, every now and then, look, there is these little dark, I don't really know what they are. I don't question it, I just draw it. And then there is this row here as well of darker stones, and they're quite nice to put in, I think. Now, if we look closely at this door here, it's a double door, like halfway down. That kind of old, battered wood, isn't it? Okay, so that's probably enough of an outline. So I'll just give you a moment to catch up there. You know, don't try and be too accurate. Don't try and put too much detail in. And what I might do, while I'm just giving you a minute to catch up, let's just look back at this one here. I've got my, I'll do this with the black wing. In fact, it doesn't really matter. Just something, you want something dark. I'll show you a bit in there. I'm just adding a little bit of extra shading in the pencil. The watercolour purists will be horrified at this. And I say, do what works. Do whatever works for you. Right, I'm going to go back to this one now. So I'm going to put my pen outline on. Right, I'm just looking at comments. Right, Chris says you wouldn't add any brickwork at this stage. No, not necessarily, Chris, and I'll show you how I do that. Because I just show you on here, look, on that practice one. Quite often I just put the stones in just with watercolour. Also, I don't need to do it in pencil. I can do those just with a pen. So now I'm going to put these lines on. I'm just going to have to move. I'm drawing it not quite the right angle here for me. Now with the roof, this goes back just to what Chris was just asking about. Do you put all of the brickwork or whatever in? The roof, I can see quite a lot of horizontal lines for the tiles. So actually for that, I would just put a hint of that in. We don't want to get too bogged down in the detail. So that's the top line of the wall. And I will come back and add a bit of detail to that wall in a moment. I'm just going to go over these lines though and get the main kind of features in. So I've drawn those ones in because remember they're the really dark black ones that stand out when we actually look at that scene. And again, these are just kind of hints of the little wood panel there. Now for this stone wall, I'm just going to do this one with paint, but here I might just pick out a few of those stones. And I'm not drawing these from the picture. This is about the what you know versus what you see sort of thing. So you're just kind of hinting there. You put in just enough for the brain to work out the rest that this is a stone wall. Now we can just get rid of those pencil marks. I'm ready to add a bit of colour. Now, yellow ochre, I use a lot of. As I said, it's useful for sand. It's useful for sandstone, but it's a bit too yellow if we just go straight on with that colour. So I mix a little bit of grey or black, and straight away that takes it from a yellow to more of a sandstony colour, as long as I use it with plenty of water. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put a wash of that sandstone on there. Now don't feel you have to colour every single bit. Okay, I've left quite a bit of space there. And the wall at the front is also sandstone. It is actually, if you look back at the photo, it is a little bit darker. So then I would build in a little bit more grey. You see how I'm just dotting that as well? That's to give more of a sense of the stonework there. I'm going to leave those two bits to dry. I can see a tiny bit of sky at the top. So I'm going to clean my brush, otherwise my sky is going to look green. I'm just adding a bit of stronger blue there. I'm putting a bit more of excitement in my sky there. And then a simple grey wash on the roof. And again, don't feel you have to fill every bit of that. Yeah, Chris is saying that really makes you look at the variation in the colour. Drawing just really, really makes you look. It's the one time when I'm drawing something, I am 100% focused and concentrating. You have to really, really look at something. Now this wall here, it needs a bit of shade under there. So I'm going back to my ochre, but with a bit more grey at the top there. And the thing about watercolour is you can just dot it on and kind of let it do its own thing. And that will just kind of move around, it just will bleed out. And then this is slightly darker. This is the ochre that I've added a touch of grey to, because the brickwork here, look, is a little bit darker. So you can start to just dot some of those bricks in. Sorry, they're not bricks, are they? They're stones. And as those dry, they will become less obvious. And on the wall here, they're even darker. So I'm just going to dot a few more of those bricks in. Now I'm switching to this because I want to put my phone box in, and that, I can't be too loose with the colour here because it's bright red. And if you look at the roof appears white because of the light reflecting. So we don't want to put any colour on that roof bit. And again, you don't have to colour the whole thing. It's quite nice just to leave a little bit to the imagination. The windows need to be darker, but we'll come back to that. And I'm going to add a hint of green, because I can see these as green. And then I'm going to use quite a bright orange for this door, probably more orange than it is in real life, but you know, this is such a nice pop of colour in the sandstone. We need to make the most of it. And then you can always go back. So I've lost a little bit of the depth of the shade under here. It is just about going back and putting those layers on. Now these windows here, I wouldn't try and colour the whole window in, but they are quite dark, what we can see. So I would just kind of hint at that. And the same, use a bit of shade under there. And the top of the orange bit there is actually quite dark where it sits underneath that lintel. Okay, now this actually needs a little bit more depth and shading, but like before, we need to let that dry before we go on, especially with the Stabilo, which is water soluble. Now I'm aware that we're slightly running over time, but I did just want to show you, let me just find my picture. I'm trying to do a scene like this. Now this is a riverside scene, so this is a view of the Yore in Yorkshire. There is an awful lot to draw here, and one of the dangers of trying to draw something like this is that there is so much green, it can become just a little bit muddled when you paint it, it just looks green. So I've pulled out this scene here, but in actual fact, if I'm painting this in just a small square, the interesting bit to me, to my eye here, is this, there's a nice sort of dead tree here. And that's a nice kind of feature. I would probably pick out sort of that bit there. So we've got a little bit of water, we've got this kind of dead tree, we've got this nice bright light green here, and then the darker trees behind. That makes it a little bit more manageable. So I'm going to start by, I'm going to put in the river line, and what I can see actually is a row of stones. So remember that trick of just drawing without lifting your pen up until I get to this point here. There's this green bush with the dead tree. When you got up this morning, did you know you would be drawing a dead tree? I know I'm really looking at what I can see. That's the whole concentrating thing. Now, trees can be quite tricky to draw, so what I tend to do is wiggly line. And then here, this is the much lighter green that we can see, and every now and then we can see this extra sort of tree or bush bit sticking up. Along this side comes in part of a much bigger tree. And then we've got the darker trees behind, but then you can also see just a couple of trunks, so we can just pick those out. Lou says, when in doubt, wiggle, always. That's why I say don't ever try and be too accurate. Keep it wiggly. There's the dead tree. those trunks. Now they're important because the rest of that behind there is going to be very dark green. It's quite nice to pick out the other bits, the other colour that we can see. And there's my sort of practice one from earlier. And water can be quite tricky to draw. Water rarely looks blue unless you're on holiday in the Med or something and it's reflecting that lovely blue sky. When we look at rivers and things, they're very often brown and grey. This one has a very distinctive shadow from the tree here and here. And a lot of this actually is very, very light. So I'm just going to quick wash of colour. I know we're running slightly over time. So I'm picking out a nice light green here. This bit that's growing in the front actually appears much darker. Much darker along that lower edge. And then when we look at these trees here in the background, they are also much darker. They're also a slightly different green. Let me see if I can. I'm just mixing a few greens together to give me that. You can see what I mean about when there's a lot of green, it's quite tricky because they can all just merge into one. Okay, now they all need to be a little bit dark, but I'll let those dry a bit and then I can add more. Now let's just have a look at the water. I'm using a very, very watery grey to start with. Underneath these trees here, we've got quite a strong shadow of green, really. It's green reflecting the trees above. And then the river is much darker at the edge by those stones. Just kind of building up those layers there. I'm going to go back to my yellow ochre, my sandstone colour, and I'm just going to drop those rocks in there. I'm just going back to this one now. I'm going to finish in a moment because there's a little bit of finishing off I need to do here, but I'm aware that we're kind of running out of time. Well, we did actually some time ago, but just to add a little bit of extra shade, look, it makes all the difference. Okay, now they do need finishing off a little bit, especially this one here, but it's a little bit wet. What I will do is finish them off properly, and then I'll load them in the comments section. I'll also read back through all of your comments and make sure that I haven't missed too much. I was busy kind of painting, not reading the comments, so sorry, but I will try and catch up with those, and then share the finished my drawings when I've completed them and added the sort of shading. Now, if you want to see more of what I do, you can come and join my group here on Facebook, Create with Kate, where I share details of other classes and things. I'm actually in the middle of recording a drawing class. I've been recording it for a while, but there's a lot of distractions in the summer, not gonna lie. But it's kind of half done, and that's going to be a bit of everything drawing, like pattern drawing, observational drawing, self-portraits, urban sketching. But details of that will be in my Create with Kate book, but Create with Kate Facebook page, sorry. Thank you all so much for joining me. Do share what you have drawn when you've had a chance to finish those off. Thanks to Lou and all the team at Jammers for asking me, and hope to see you all another time. Thank you very much. Goodbye, everybody.